So now let's talk about the coming of the Civil War. On the evening of 1859, it was October 16, 1859, there was a raid that took place led by John Brown. Okay? He led 18 followers in seizing the federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry. And that was in Virginia back then, but now it's called, it's part of West Virginia, right? He took hostages and he wanted to incite slavery up to rise. Abolitionists supported him in many ways, and, but there were, of course, responsible Northerners. Okay? In essence, Abraham Lincoln was one of them who condemned and denounced his actions, okay? Because it was very, very extreme in a way. John Brown was charged with Virginia law with treason and various other crimes during that time when he was captured. In December 1859, he was executed. He articulated at the time to many Northerners that he was an ally rather than a murderer. But in a way, his death, okay, was marked in the North by signs of public mourning. Now, the second greatest fear of Southern slave owners was that Southern whites who did not own slaves, by far the majority of Southern population, would come to see the continuation of slavery as not being in their best interest. Okay? The ideal situation is that really came from the book of Hinton Rowan Harper, The Impending Crisis in the South, which was reissued in a way by the Republican, okay, Party as a campaign literature. So the Southern people, okay, the people that were representing the Southern politics, got really angry at this point, to a point that when the House met in December 1859, all right, angry Southerners made a point that no Republican who endorsed the book should be elected Speaker. Tension really remained high during this time. The election of 1860 successfully placed Abraham Lincoln, okay, as the 16th President of the United States. Lincoln had declared that he had no intention from the very beginning to disturb slavery where it already exists. But many Southerners thought that otherwise, okay, that they did not believe him. They feared further raids like John Brown's raid, and the pride was injured by the election because they, okay, the South, did not vote for Lincoln. He was not their president. Okay, so the South here, as you can see, okay, let's go back a little bit here. You could see in the map that this is the South, okay, which at that point called the Confederate States of America. So from Virginia on all the way over here, okay. So the Northerners, okay, were all here, which is not shown in the map. Okay, so let's continue. On December 1860, South Carolina declared itself out of the Union. Then by February 1861, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas also declared, and they followed. They were to be the Confederate States of America. So again, look at the map. That is where all those people are, okay, deciding that this would be the declaration of New America, the Confederate States of America. Okay? They elected former Secretary of War, U.S. Senator Jefferson Davis of Mississippi as president, and of course Alexander Stephens of Georgia as vice president. They also adopted similar constitution at their own constitution. Okay? So at this point, Abraham Lincoln was president, but Abraham Lincoln in a way was controlling the North, and the South had, they were forming their own government. There were a lot of compromise and debate to preserve the Union, okay? And most of the central issues and topics were about slavery. Some congressional Republicans were inclined to accept the fact that there was this compromise. And the President-elect Lincoln urged them to stand firm to make sure that there was no more spread of slavery anywhere at least at the North. Southerners would consider no compromise, and they did not provide any sort of compromise with the North in regards to the continuation of slavery. So many ways, the compromise, okay, broke into different pieces. So this is the beginning of the Civil War in a way, the high tension between the North, which is being led by President-elect Lincoln, and the new tension that they have against the politics and, you know, the moral values discrepancy that they have about the South, still having to make that decision to continue with slavery. And as we move on to the next module, we'll learn how really where this tension led to. But unfortunately, it will lead to a conflict between two sections of the United States, and that would be the North versus the South.